Hi, and welcome back to White Noise. Today, we are going to be transporting ourselves out of this insane heat to another summer that we've lovingly called the Summer of Aliens, even though we're going to be talking about one decade to the next. Couldn't think of what else to call it. But I'm going to hand it straight over to Leanna to explain what we're doing today, because she'll just explain it so much better than I will. So there we go.
Okay, so thank you for the intro, Sky. Basically, I've been on a bit of a kick watching horror documentaries as of late and got super into Eli Roth's History of Horror and, Into Darkness, which I highly recommend. And I realised through watching them that one of my favourite films, The Thing, was released the same year as E.T. Obviously, they feature an alien. Obviously, they're both beloved now. But back when they came out in 1982, they had very different reactions from audiences.
Mhm.
So the way we want to start this episode is by basically saying, we're going to talk about aliens. And, the broader alien genre, sci-fi, the alien blockbuster in particular, I guess, is the best way to put it. But yeah, really, we want to start with that summer of 1982 and dissect why the thing flopped when it came out and why E.T. did well and has like public perception and enjoyment of alien blockbusters changed? Like, do we take different things from these films now? Like, that's the best way I can get into it. So do you have anything you want to start with?
So I couldn't have an opinion on if the thing deserved to flop or not until last night, because I don't know if you know this, Leanna, I'd never actually watched the thing.
Do you know what? I'm not going to get mad. I'm happy you've seen it,
I mean, if you've been listening to us for a while now, like, I do love film. I love all kinds of different films, but there's just some stuff I haven't watched for a lot of different reasons. For anybody who hasn't listened to or watched our Halloween specials that we did last year, I had a similar thing with The Exorcist. Classic film, beloved. I had never seen it. I had a very different reason for why I hadn't seen it. If you're interested in that, please go back to the episode. The reason I just hadn't seen this one is because I don't think I knew that it flopped, but I just always actually thought it was a bad film. I didn't think it was a good film. Yeah, so I never,
Interesting.
so this is going to be hard to explain because I'm going to contradict myself a bit, but I thought it was just like another 80s B movie horror kind of thing,
Okay.
which I love. Don't get me wrong. Like, unironically, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, I love nearly every film, even the bad ones. When it comes to aliens, because I have like a very love-hate relationship with the genre, I can't really take cheesy, campy stuff in that genre, and it appealed to me. Anyway, so obviously because we were going to be doing the episode, I decided to finally watch the thing, fully expecting to maybe not like it, and then having to decide whether I pretend that I liked it to save myself on the episode or be honest.
From my wrath.
It has now probably become my favorite horror film ever. How the hell have I never seen this before? I'm not even joking. I put it.
I will say for you and for listeners, I've just never pegged you as a sci-fi person. If I've ever pegged you as sci-fi, it's for like Alien, where maybe it leans more towards horror.
Yeah.
And now I say that out loud, actually, it does make sense why you'd like The Thing, because some people call it sci-fi, some people call it horror. I would put it
sci-fi horror. It is sci-fi. The only sci-fi that and people are going to hate me for saying this, but the only sci-fi that I say I always loved was probably Doctor Who, because I was a huge Doctor Who fan growing up, which I know goes into a lot of different genres. It's also not like what we're talking about today.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But you're not wrong. I've always had like I said, I love-hate relationship with sci-fi and aliens in general. For example, the second season of American Horror Story.
I was going to bring it up.
Whether you liked the season or not, I couldn't get into it because of the aliens part of it.
It was felt like shoehorned in.
Oh my God, so much. It was so unnecessary, and it took me out of it so much that like I was just like, no, it's not for me. And that's kind of how I've always been with alien stuff. So when it came to watching The Thing, I didn't really expect to like it, and I was hooked. Not only was I insanely impressed by the sound design and the visual effects, it actually made me jump twice. There were two parts of it that I was like,
I feel like I can guess which bits.
Go on, I bet you can.
Yeah, was it the clamp I guess is
Oh,
the
with
best way
when
to put it.
when he
Yeah,
puts like his hands in, yeah,
yeah.
there was, yeah, when he puts his
And
hands in the
when
stomach.
the thing comes out of the petri dish.
Yeah, it was so
You know
stupid.
what, right? There is something about sci-fi horror and jump scares. They just work because
Yeah.
you can almost go body horror with it when we're
Hmm.
talking extraterrestrial life forms, And I think like to me, that is the best form of jump scare is when,
Hmm.
it's something that just doesn't even look like normal. Nothing like
Yeah.
we've ever seen, because I find sometimes like when it comes to like ghosts and stuff, you've seen it a million times, whereas in something
Yeah.
like The Thing, you've never seen anything fucking like that. So it earns that jump
It
scare, that
was,
shock from you.
yeah, it was insane. I loved it. It was great.
So
I had a,
what
mm,
was your favorite part of The Thing?
probably the visual effects,
Really?
because I didn't expect it to be that, like, it's not that I didn't expect it to be good, because I've always 100% preferred like the visual effects of like decades gone, not because I'm the kind of person that's like, oh, it was so much better in so and so time, but because genuinely things have become so smooth now, is
Mhm.
the only way I can think to describe
Yeah.
it, like through motion and texture and
Mm.
stuff like that, that it actually, it's uncanny valley.
Yeah.
It doesn't look real, and it really takes you out of the
It's too
moment
smooth, isn't it?
usually. So like
It's
that's why
cheap.
I've always been a much bigger fan of like puppetry and costume and things like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that like every so often you're probably going to need to put in some maybe CGI or things here or there. I'm also not saying that like obviously everything in The Thing looked 100% real, but the difference is that I've never seen that kind of thing in real life.
Yeah, of
So
course.
maybe it does.
Yeah.
But because as far as I could tell, obviously it was all done with like, I don't know, puppetry, animatronics,
Hmm.
visual manipulation, whatever. It was, yeah, it was just so impressive, and it was so gross. Oh
I
my god, it was so
know.
gross.
I see. I'm going to go full nerd right now and talk about the practical effects. So in the 80s, there's a whole gang of these dudes who were getting massive doing effects. You got your Rick Bakers, dude was insane. He did An American Werewolf in London. Have you seen?
I have,
Of
yes.
course, that iconic
Hmm.
transformation
Hmm.
scene, all that. So he originally was approached to do The Thing, and he was too busy. He couldn't fit him in because obviously the dude's in demand. But I still think, what would The Thing look like by Rick Baker? Like, I don't want it different. I love how it turned out, but it is
Hmm.
something that honestly, I
Keeps
lose
you up at
sleep.
night.
I lose sleep. But
Yeah.
so the effects were done by Rob Bottin,
Hmm.
and he did the makeup for The Howling, which is of course the other, massive werewolf film of the 80s.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
fun
yeah.
fact, The Howling came out the same year as American Werewolf in London. They were basically neck and neck.
What was
And
going
another
on?
fun fact, the mum from The Howling is in ET. So, it's all a bit fascinating. So there's crossover happening all around
Yeah.
this episode. I just really like that all these like makeup guys, all these same directors and writers and actors, they were all working with each other through the late 70s and 80s. And I feel like
Hmm.
that's part of where the magic comes from, because they're
Yeah,
also
definitely.
comfortable with it and stuff.
Hmm.
And I find the visual effects in The Thing so interesting, and just in all those 80s horror films, and obviously we'll talk about in ET as well. But it just feels so much more authentic, and you get so much more
Yeah.
into it because just so much more care was put into the effects, and you can almost feel it like through the screen when you're watching the film. Not to get
Oh yeah.
cringy with it, but like, oh my god, sometimes you just see a certain shot in, say, The Thing, and you're like, oh my god, the hours that must have gone into
Hmm.
that. And you
Oh
just
yeah,
kind of
nothing.
appreciate what you're seeing a lot more.
Yeah, nothing felt like it was like half-assed or just thrown in for
Exactly.
the sake of it. It did feel like it was thought out from beginning to
Yeah,
end.
and because they weren't leaning on CGI, everything that was there, of course, it's extraterrestrial, but it still had to be like, like rooted in the real world's like laws of like
Hmm.
physics and
Hmm.
stuff. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know, it just, there's something about it. Like, I've
Yeah.
watched The Thing and I'm just, every time I'm in awe. Like, even if
Yeah.
you don't like the story, the
Hmm.
acting, which if you ask me is insane, because I think the performances in this film are incredible. Like, even if you don't like any of that, the music, the sound design, like, you have to respect the visual effects.
Definitely. But like
Oh,
you just said, I was just gonna say as well, like even like visual effects aside, the story was really good. Like it
mm,
wasn't super intricate, it was pretty basic, but the way it was done was just done so well. It was like feeding into like paranoia and
yes.
isolation and
Yeah.
just how human beings act towards each other, like how quick we are to mistrust each
Yeah.
other. And it's like kind of just everything that I fear. So I guess, and it really makes sense what you just said, that
Yeah.
like I actually kind of forgot that it was like classed as sci-fi going through
Yeah,
it,
you
because
do, you really do.
whilst they like literally found a freaking spaceship that this thing had come from, you saw that for a second, and then it was more to do with obviously the horror that this thing was inflicting
Yes.
upon them.
It's so fascinating, isn't it? How it's a
Mhm.
sci-fi horror film, but most of the horror doesn't even come from, you know, those bits with the
Yeah.
creature. It's the distrust, you know, and the
Yeah.
paranoia. The paranoia is honestly palpable. Like the
Mhm.
atmosphere in the thing is just like, it's next level, isn't it? It's
Mhm. Yeah,
incredible.
it really is.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was the original script was a lot longer. Like they literally, it's like a fraction of the original script because they removed so much dialogue, and I think like that really serves the atmosphere. Like I
Mhm.
think a film set in like, what is it, Antarctica?
Yeah,
Like
I
in
think
the
so.
quiet of Antarctica, like if everyone was talking every second, you wouldn't feel that dread so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It was like there was so many like elongated moments and like over the shoulder camera shots and things like that where there was nothing, and
Yeah.
it wasn't even like I was expecting something to happen. It was like it was literally focusing on the absence of anything, and again it just
Yes.
really highlighted like the isolation of this. And again, that like one of the most haunting moments was when I can't remember what the character's name, but Kurt Russell's character was
Mm,
like doing that tape recording,
mm,
basically preempting that they probably weren't going to survive, and completely like comparing it to something totally different. But it was like a similar scene that I remember in the film Hush, where she is typing out, like she gets to like near the end of the film, and because she doesn't think she's going to survive the scenario she's in, she starts typing out what the guy looks like and things like that. And it was just really
mm.
heartbreaking
Yeah.
because it was like that moment of defeat and knowing you weren't going to survive. And it was a similar thing in The Thing, when yeah, he was just like, if we all succumb to this, nobody's gonna know. And
Yeah.
that's also scary, because then if this recording doesn't get found and this thing gets unleashed into the world, it's like how do you fight that?
Well, there's that little bit where they're calculating how long it would
Mhm.
take, isn't there, to take over. Fun
Yeah,
fact, the estimation is 3 years. 3 years it would take. That's not
yeah,
very long.
that's not very long.
But no, yes, I completely agree with you. This film is honestly a bit heartbreaking. Like you
Yeah,
don't
it is.
expect to go into it like your soul torn
Yeah,
out
no,
at
I
the
didn't. I
end.
just didn't expect the emotion in it. Like to an
It's
extent, I think
horrible, isn't it?
yeah, I expected like the visual effects and stuff, even though I'm still blown away by them. But the fact that it's actually like a thought out, fleshed out story, and it's not just grim and gross
Mm.
and for the sake of it, it's really not. Yeah, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this has seen it, but if you haven't, please go watch it. It's amazing. I'm now the Thing ambassador. I know nothing else about it,
Hmm.
but it's just I generally think it's become one of my favorite horror films.
I
It's
feel
so
like now
good.
you should go watch a bit more John Carpenter, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I just think it's so incredible that he got given this project. Like he
Mhm.
originally wasn't gonna. It was gonna go to Toby Hooper, and Toby Hooper did Poltergeist with Steven Spielberg. So that's another connection that we're getting
Oh.
through this,
Mhm.
you know, this whole area of dudes that can help us talk about Steven Spielberg.
Great
Kind
segue.
of
Well done. Can you tell we've been doing this for
beautiful,
nearly 2 years now?
seamless.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that leads us to E.T., which came out before The Thing, as you
Mhm.
learned very
Mhm.
recently. Do you
Literally, I
want
think I
to
learned it last
elaborate?
night. Usually for like our episodes, like I do quite a lot of like research because I love trivia. I sometimes watch a film just for the sake of being able to go into IMDb afterwards, just to like look at the
Mm,
trivia. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't for these films. So the only thing I kind of found out was that E.T. literally came out like a few weeks before The Thing premiered,
mhm.
and it was 100% a huge part of why it flopped at the
Oh,
time.
yeah, you can't deny
I think it might have flopped anyway, just because of the era and how resistant people to were, because to were how
it.
resistant people were to that kind of thing. Because we've spoken about it
Mm,
before. Like again, we did an episode on like banned, cursed, and controversial films, and it's strange to think what was classed as like controversial back then. I actually think The Thing did get banned in like Finland or
yeah,
something,
it did.
whereas obviously ET was a lot more accessible to people.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
such a shame that any success it could have had, maybe even like a,
Mm,
I mean, I'm sure it did still get a cult following, but like any kind of success it could have had at the time was definitely taken away by E.T.,
It was
which
just forgotten for so long.
I
Yeah.
hate to say it. I have only watched The Thing last night, so I'm sure I'll calm down a bit. But I rewatched E.T. this morning. I've obviously seen it many
Yeah.
times, but I rewatched it this morning, and it was really hard for me to watch it and not like nitpick at it, because I was like, well, you know what, you did this, but The Thing didn't do it, and like look how they did. And like I was like comparing like the special effects, because I was watching it with Alicia, and she was saying to me, she was like, it's just like crazy how good the special effects were back then. And I was like, haven't seen The Thing. I'm not saying that they're bad, but
No, I
just
get completely
I
what you're
think just
saying.
going straight from one to the other, like if you've never say like watched The Thing and then watched ET afterwards, I recommend doing it, because you will just see the difference, and the fact that I'm not taking away from ET's success, but the only reason it hit the way it did was obviously because of the accessibility and the lovable story of it and things like that, because it wasn't hugely revolutionary from its time as us talking about like just this one year, no matter the whole decade of the 80s and even prior,
Well,
like parts of the 70s.
Even Steven Spielberg himself said that he riffed on Close Encounters of the Third Kind from a few years prior. You know, he literally said he took the idea for E.T. from the ending of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like even the look of the aliens is pretty much directly from that. So it's not, I agree, it wasn't like completely revolutionary. The Thing isn't really either, but I think what happened with E.T. is just that we kind of look now at Steven Spielberg as almost like a cliche as a human being. And we forget what a revolutionary filmmaker he was, because the heart that he added to his films is insane. Because it's like, I can't think of a single filmmaker where every single one of their films is like so heartfelt, really.
Very true,
like he makes a film about an alien, heartfelt. He makes a film about well, he didn't direct it, but he produced, Poltergeist, a film about literally like a ghosts coming after a family, heartfelt. Like who else could do that in like every genre, and I feel like if it wasn't for Steven Spielberg, obviously E.T. just would not be what it is, and you can say the same for The Thing with John Carpenter, but I just feel like if there's one person that made E.T. what it's Spielberg, isn't it? No?
Yeah, that's something I definitely did realize, because I've never really watched E.T. with like, I don't even say like an analytical mind, but I've always just enjoyed it as a film. I've never really thought about it, but like you said, talking about it like that is like, you can, if you took away the storyline and like the sweetness of like the relationship between Ellie and E.T., but also the fact that both of them are like using each other to fill a void that they have and things like that, it wouldn't be the same. It would actually probably be a pretty boring film, because it's like, it's a sad story, but like, oh, alien gets lost on Earth.
It's a simple concept that has like these amazing like characters inserted into it, and like just this like very quaint, very real, small town world. Like I watch E.T. and I'm like, damn, like just like the pajamas they wear and the toys they have and the food they eat, everything about it just feels very like it could be in your neighborhood,
It's like, what is it, cookie cutter America?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, it's just so cute, isn't it? And one thing I think adds to it is, I'm not sure if you noticed this, but so much of the film is filmed from the perspective of a child, and that's just so Spielberg to me. Like he just manages to add that like childlike awe to everything. You watch his stuff and you go back to being a kid, and like everyone always like, they cite like Jurassic Park, but I honestly feel like E.T. is probably the better example of it.
I think it's also like a testament to the child actors that they obviously had in it as well. Because if you had it, and like, don't get me wrong, I can't act, so I'm not expecting like any child to be able to, but like a lot of the time child actors don't come across very genuine. Either they come across as too old for their age, because either they are or they've been told to portray like really complex emotions that understandably, and you would hope that a child wouldn't understand at that age. So asking them to do it without any kind of reference or maybe experience is hard. Or they'll come across as really flat. They might come across as unlikable, because not everybody likes kids, that's fine. So if they do like one little thing, it might annoy you, and then that really, when they're like the crux of the film, it just destroys your whole experience with it.
We're seeing this with a TV show which recently released a 4th season, but we'll get to that.
Yes. But for now, staying on ET, yeah, the casting, insane. Everything did tie together like so well.
Do you know the story of the kid who played Elliot, how he got the role?
I don't think so.
So he like walks in the room and he starts like crying, and he's basically like, I think he said to Spielberg he was like just thinking about his dog that had passed away, and this is like a child.
Oh,
and he like, you know, he like accesses that memory and starts crying, and this is what adults do when they act. They access a memory and use it, you know. And like Steven Spielberg said, he just like boom, cast him on the spot. Like,
I believe
and
it.
you can feel it when you watch that film. Like, a kid should not be able to act like that kid does. Oh my god. Like, you see like Haley Joel Osment from like Sixth Sense and all, like he became a household name. I don't know the name of the kid from E.T. I
was actually going to ask what like happened afterwards. I don't know if you know if like he did anything.
I don't think so, but it's like, so incredible in that film. I'm sure maybe something happened, maybe he was in a few flops or something, but it honestly blows my mind that he did not have an insane career. Like, what happened? He's so good. That scene where he's crying as E.T. is dying, oh my god, it still gets to me.
But this is what I mean though, like, again, because it was better than CGI would have been, but obviously the puppetry was, especially with E.T.'s model, was very clunky, I think is the only thing to put it. Like, you know, like he kind of walked like a penguin, and
he looked quite like it.
Oh no, I think it's endearing. I'm not saying that like it ruined the film or anything, but just like, again, watching it, knowing we were going to talk about it, I was watching it like a little bit more actively than I probably would have done. So, and also again, because I was like riding on my thing high, I was being more critical than probably intended. But like, E.T. always looked better when he was like just stood, like just still, and like that worked. So like when you had the scene, for example, with like obviously when him and Elliot were dying, and he was just this thing on the table, and yet it was still so sad, because yes, true, I feel like music can just make me get sad for any, even if it's an inanimate object. But obviously the actor who played Elliot's acting was just, I'm getting emotional thinking about it, it's mixing up my words, was just so sensational that like you feel it, like it hits you unexpectedly.
Oh my
God. Hits you here, like no matter how many times you watch it, it happens and you're like, oh god.
I feel like it's because it goes beyond the acting. I think it's because some part of you is so aware you're watching a child perform that, you know, and the fact that, you know, they're performing that for a fucking animatronic, like he should not be that good. But did you know that 10% of ET's budget went towards the animatronics? And that is insane. 10%. You know, this isn't, you know, the special effects budget. That's literally just the animatronic.
I mean, you can see it. Like, I don't want to like say now that like I'm shitting on it or whatever, because obviously, again, you do have limitations of time and stuff like that. And I also don't think it should have been done any other way, because like you just said, I do like the clunkiness and stuff of it. It's just so funny, the comparison between like when like he's walking and he's literally like, when you like get a doll and you make it walk, and then you have like close-ups of like his hands that are moving quite well. It's just, you know,
this way you can tell where it's like gloves and makeup and then where it's a you know, like definitely.
So even though I'm not gonna like shit on the visual effects of ET, obviously, but this is where like I think I know The Thing did more, but I also thought it was just better because I thought it, with The Thing, it just melded together really well. There was no kind of, I can't really think of one special effect. I mean, I'm sure there is. I have only seen it once at this point, but there's not one special effect where I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, that took me out of it. Like I definitely knew. Whereas with ET, there was those like few moments.
Got you.
But again, definitely doesn't take away from the film as a whole. It's also a different kind of film. Like if you had that in The Thing, it would have probably, I'm not saying deserved the flop, because again, you're limited in what you can do in different decades, but I would have understood more why it flopped. if it had those like really poor visual effects moments, whereas ET could get away with it because, like you said, it had a really heartfelt story, and that's what people cared about more. Like, in all honesty, ET could have been a dog and it still would have worked.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Obviously not on the same scale, and it wouldn't have the same legacy, but you see what I mean?
Yeah, I completely do.
Yeah.
Have you ever actually looked at the numbers for the budget and box office for
I
these
haven't.
two
I was going to
films?
ask you about
Okay,
it.
so because I knew this was going to come up. So The Thing had a higher budget. Okay, The Thing had a
Okay.
budget of 15 mil, which, looking back, 15 mil, and they made that nuts. But anyway, and then the budget of ET was 10.5. That's
Oh, okay.
crazy. So
I'm
you
actually
essentially can you can take half of ET's budget and add it on top, and you had The Thing's budget. But see, on a budget of 10.5 mil, ET's box office was 792 million. I don't know if that's world. I feel like that's world. It didn't specify on Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. The Thing, the box office was 19.6. Isn't it?
What have they done to my boy?
But it just honestly doesn't play in mind.
I'm actually not surprised by any of those numbers, and I'm kind of happy to hear that ET actually had a smaller budget, because it's, again, me being it does, and also me being nitpicky, but it was even just like right at the beginning of the film, I think they do like a shot of like the town as a background, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was just bad focusing, but it looks like a green screen or whatever, right? But then when they have people walk in front of it, the people, it looks like when somebody like cam records stuff in a cinema and someone in the audience stands up and they're really out of focus. Like, it looked like that, and I was like, this is the beginning of your film? So to hear that, like, not only was the budget smaller, but like you said, 10% of it just went to the animatronics, that makes sense to me.
100%. It just blows my mind though, like looking at these numbers, how you can make something like ET, which is so beloved, for 10.5 mil, and now like a Marvel film will have a budget of like 300 million. And like,
this is just
I'm not gonna say anything, but...
Well, I'm kind of almost going to coax it out of you now, but I was just going to say to you, brought up a really interesting point when we were discussing doing this episode that I never really thought about before, is how the definition of like sci-fi has changed. And like you said, when people say sci-fi, you definitely, but me to an extent, think of stuff like you said, like E.T., The Thing, Star Wars, that, way back kind of thing. Whereas
classic sci-fi,
whereas obviously now people think of, like you said, because there are so many of them, the Marvel films.
I always feel like they've replaced it in a way.
I think so. I think so. And I mean, it's understandable, because also things change over time,
of course,
and there is a chance that we could do like a whole 180 and then go back to how things used to be. It's hard to say really, but especially if obviously there are just so many of these films, and they're going to keep coming out until people are bored of them, and I don't know when. And we could talk about this another time, but like me and Leanne, I think, have very different opinions when it comes to the films. If you actually would want to hear about them, let us know.
I feel like we just have to do it at some point or another.
Maybe the first ever argument we've actually had on White Noise.
Probably. No, but like, no, yeah, I completely I feel like we do have a similar standpoint on just like the state of, say, like, not like cinemas, but how tastes are changing. We completely agree. So like 10 years ago, people like to say like, 20, 30, 40 years ago. No, 10 years ago, you could walk into a cinema in July and you could watch something like sci-fi, you could watch like specifically a superhero film, you could watch an action blockbuster. Like, there were choices. Whereas now, it's an existing property, it's existing IP. It's almost always superheroes, and people like to go, but some are Marvel and some are DC. They're still superhero films. They still fall within that. Like, don't get me wrong, like, you can explore different genres in the superhero umbrella, but at the end of the day, it's still a superhero film. And I just like, people would be so confused if they walked into a cinema and everything was just horror films, or if they walked in and everything was just romance. So I don't understand why it's become so normal. But anyway, I think go on about this forever. But I do miss a good, fun sci-fi blockbuster. We discussed some. One I'm going to throw out, Looper. What a classic! What a classic!
Again, another one I was surprised to enjoy.
Oh my god, Looper, incredible. Just gonna say it. I know it has its flaws. Love that film. Cowboys vs Aliens. Stinker. Another one where I'm like, In Time. Very divisive. People seem to have a bit of a love-hate relationship with In Time.
Yeah.
You know, I miss sci-fi, you know,
Yeah.
like a fun concept in a blockbuster that wasn't just superheroes. I mean, like, there's not that many alien ones really I can think of in our lifetime. You know, there's we had like some Star Wars films. We caught the later end of the prequels, and
but then I don't know. I don't know if that like counts, because again, it's like
its own thing.
But it's not even just it's well, yeah, it definitely is that, but it's also because it's the ending of something that was begun like way back. So I don't know if I can claim that as ours.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
But yeah, no, I think when it comes to like, even though we might have different opinions on like the individual films themselves, I do agree with you that like now, because I said I go and I look at like cinema times for films. And I remember when you sent me, especially when like Multiverse of Madness came out, and I think either you tweeted it or you sent me the screening times, and it was but it was like 6 a.m. in the morning till like midnight. It was like every half an hour, and I was like, don't get me wrong, I know they make the money, but my god, it does just it yeah, you're right.
Yeah, whether you love those films or not, that shouldn't be a happy thing. It's like, I would kill to see more like alien films back in the cinema. They're such spectacle. People think, oh, superhero films are doing well because they're spectacle. There are so many films of spectacle you can go see in the cinema, like The Northman, films like Gladiator, you know, Lord of the Rings, like all these different things. Like, it doesn't have to be a superhero film to have spectacle. I think this is, you know, people's minds now immediately jump to Marvel films when they think of spectacle. And it doesn't have to be the case at all. Like, I don't know about you, I'm really excited for Nope. And that's going to be aliens.
Me too.
Like, I mean, it's not being confirmed, but it's pretty fucking obvious, isn't it? You know,
unless
I'm really excited.
Maybe we're being led around in a circle, but
yeah, true. But like, I'm really, really excited when, like, you know, when it first kind of became like a bit obvious it was going to be aliens, there was a lot of debate around it on Twitter, but for the most part I found people were like, okay, like, I'm excited to see
I'm interested.
Blockbuster.
I was gonna say I'm interested to see that, because I was really similar, obviously, again, because of like how I am with like alien stuff in general. I did see it and thought, okay, maybe this isn't going to be for me. But then yeah, you're right, I'm interested to see if it happens and if we get it, an alien blockbuster.
But yeah, I'm really excited for Nope, honestly. But I'm also really liking to see that a lot of sci-fi has moved to the small screen. Not necessarily a good thing, because at the end of the day I would like to see it on a big screen, but it is nice to see that it's living on in some capacity, which is leading us to Stranger Things, baby. And I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. Is it aliens? You know, this is cause for debate.
I didn't actually think about this.
Well, see, my mind automatically goes to alien because it's like alien beings.
Yeah.
People think alien means from another planet. No, it means, you know, alien is something foreign, unrecognizable. They're from another dimension.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I thought alien did literally mean from another planet.
No, I feel no, because.
But then who's to?
But the extraterrestrial, if we're going to go literal with it.
Who's to argue that the Upside Down isn't another planet? Maybe we're getting
another dimension. If you ask me.
Yeah. No, you're so right. You're right. Yeah.
You know, but
yeah.
Just to clear up the listener.
I also think I would, and this is coming from me, but I would much rather prefer it to be alien than like demon, because I don't know, it gets rid of the fun of it all of a sudden, because there is a lot of fun. It
starts to be like, oh, okay, because obviously
it becomes it basically, really, and that's ironic considering
from the 80s.
Yeah,
so of course they're going for the alien vibes. That's why your brain just goes, oh, it's aliens, because you know all the kind of music, all the visuals, you just immediately, your brain associates that with aliens.
Yeah, that is what they were setting up.
Yeah, exactly.
If, like you say, it did go into like the demon side of it, it would then all of a sudden kind of become like it, which is ironic considering I'm pretty sure
it is.
He is, it is meant to be an alien. But again, that's just proof of how you set things up.
Yeah,
because it is set up like a horror film. So again, because you associate like demons and monsters with well, demons like horror, that's what you kind of see him as, even if
Oh my God,
he's
this is
not.
fascinating how you bring this up, because it's so funny how creatures which don't fit in a certain genre, your brain will trick you into thinking it's a certain genre. Because,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, now you say it, like I didn't even think about it,
Mm-hmm.
like mentioning it in this episode. It is an alien.
Yeah,
But I did think of mentioning Stranger Things. Very interesting, actually.
but I get just the manipulation of cinema. It's
I love
fantastic.
it. No, yeah, it's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Especially genres like that.
Yeah, but then again, like you said in Stranger Things, whatever these creatures are,
Mm,
it's set up, like I said, like the classic 80s alien sci-fi films that we knew. So that's what people
yeah.
see them as.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it? Because they melded so many different things, and it's just like, oh, it's still so impressive to me. People just want to be so quick to say, like, oh, they just, used 80s nostalgia. It's like, yeah, of course they did. And they
Yeah.
would never deny that. But the way they blended it is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
let's use Stephen King title cards with like very John Carpenter-esque music. Like, who thinks, like,
Yeah.
masterpiece?
I think like a good kind of, I don't know, overall example of some people's reaction to Stranger Things and like the 80s themes is the most recent series with obviously Kate Bush's song Running Up That Hill. And
Yeah.
you've got people so split for the weirdest reason, because some people are like, oh, I can't believe this song that was already a really popular song anyway. It's like, oh, everyone's gonna find, the normies are gonna find it or whatever. And it's like, but again, it's to do with people kind of criticizing how like, oh, Stranger Things stole from the 80s, and it's like it knows what it's doing.
No,
It's
we discussed this just before we started recording.
yeah,
It's paying homage. It's a love letter to an era that was so important to the
yeah,
creators. Like,
yeah. And it's the same thing with like, yeah, with this song. It's like they're not saying, oh, no one's ever heard this song, we're gonna make it big again. It
no,
was a famous song of the era. It fit
yeah,
perfectly with the scene. It's probably one of the best meldings of visuals and music I've ever heard in a while.
mhm.
And it just baffles me that people are like, why are you so upset that a whole new generation might actually be discovering something that, again, was already
Do you know
popular?
what's really fun to me as well? A lot of people saying this don't seem to understand as well why it fits so perfectly into that moment in Stranger Things. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even work. It's like, do you know what the song's about? You understand why it's Max's favorite song? I just
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people have been very quick to critique Stranger Things. And don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
like, I've had my moments, but for the most part, I'm really happy that that show is as big as it is, and it's just become
Mm-hmm.
this completely massive cultural touchdown, like to the degree of like Game of Thrones, if not bigger.
Yeah.
I would say bigger, quite honestly, because
Mm-hmm.
it touches more age groups. But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, I just think, how can you knock on that? How can you knock
Mm-hmm.
on something introducing young people to stuff they may never have been interested in before? Because,
Mm-hmm.
of course, a 13-year-old today, they're not going to be as fussed about the 80s as, say, a
Mm-hmm.
30-year-old. They're so far removed from it. I think a lot of
Yeah.
middle-aged people forget that the 80s for them is like, what, a lot of,
Yeah.
it's a lot closer for them than it is for
Mm-hmm.
teenagers today. So
I
if
also
they can watch
think,
that and go, damn, I'd love to play Dungeons and Dragons, or damn, this Kate Bush one is good. Like, that's
but you know, it's,
fun.
this is like, I'm kind of, I completely agree, but I'm kind of going to go back a little bit on what you said, just because I also don't think there's anything wrong with people just liking the show here and now.
Mhm.
It's like, a lot of people are like calling people fake. It's like, oh, well, have you ever actually seen E.T. or have you ever seen Nightmare on Elm Street? And it's like, you can like the show and not care about
Oh no, I
any of the
totally agree.
references or
I totally
anything like
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's just like you said, there's a lot in it for everybody.
Yeah, because you
And
can have the reward of, like we've said before, there can be the reward of recognizing a reference or just
mhm.
enjoying the show. You don't
Because
need to know every reference.
this is why it does frustrate me, where like people obviously acknowledging where it gets its inspiration from is fine, but people saying that, it's, I said, either like stealing or whatever, but it all fits together so well
Mm,
that you don't have to know the references and the stuff
exactly.
to enjoy it. It just adds a little more if you do.
Exactly.
And I think this new season in particular, like before we started recording, we were talking about how season 3 is probably our least favorite season. I know some people liked it, but until now, season 2 was my favorite season. Leanna
Mhm.
said it was hers as well.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how it seems to be that like people who like season 2 probably didn't like season 3, and people who like season 3 probably didn't like season 2, and you know, or vice versa. So but then I think season 4 kind of brought everybody back together again, because
because I think it returned to like a tone of season 1, obviously much darker, and it will be because the characters have aged up, and it's you know, just media in general is getting darker over the years, honestly. But I think it's just like we discussed, like I feel like the Duffer Brothers, they really liked the horror elements of season 1, so they lent into that in season 2. And then they're like, hold on, babe. And then they skidded over to, you know, the fun side in season 3. But I'm not sure if you've seen this, but in interviews with the cast, they called season 3 the Black Sheep season. I don't know. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I have my theories about how they feel about season 3, quite honestly.
It did feel, I mean, I think, as I said to you before, that to me, season 3 felt like they kind of panicked that the kids were getting, like, obviously the kids were getting older, and they wanted to bring back that kind of youth and innocence to it again.
Yeah.
But it just shows leaning in, and the show growing with the kids works so much. And Leanna made a really good point. I agree with her. I do wish they would have actually just aged them up sooner, but as in like actually along with their actual ages, it could have worked a lot better. But then at the same time, I also understand that would have isolated a lot of their audience, because the thing is, the ages from like 11 to maybe 18 are like really weird, in the sense that you skip so many ages real quick. Like 11 to 13 is only 2 years, but you become a completely different person. 13 to 15, same thing. So it's like, so I get why they didn't.
It's just definitely interesting, because you see, I don't know if you've seen it, you know, Millie Bobby Brown and Noah Schnapp, who play Eleven and Will. They're like this, aren't they? They're besties. In an interview recently, they were talking about the age of the characters, and they were both shocked by the characters' age. They didn't realize how young the characters are meant to be. I will have to send this to you after we finish recording, Sky. But anyway, it's so fascinating, because they say something about like, 14, and you know, Millie Bobby Brown just shouts like 14 in her lovely accent. And it just blows your mind, because we find it hard to believe. The cast can't even buy into it. So I feel like I agree with you. They shouldn't have jumped them to say 18, but I think maybe they should have been like 16. The problem with season 3, I think when season 3 came along, there was such a big gap between season 2 and 3. No one could buy that those characters were like 13 years old in season 3. You couldn't. You know, and that really was a big issue for me with season 3. Is it now you have said it does make sense. They're really trying to be like, no, they're kids, especially
what they could have done though?
It part 2,
they could have actually made it really ambiguous, in the sense that just don't have it during school term.
Well, season 4
have it during the summer. No, but that's what I mean though. And it's like, why not just keep it during the summers? Because then you never actually really have to tell us how old they are. I don't know that,
because I kind of like it being in different seasons. Like season 2 starting around Halloween, a bit iconic. Them trick or treating. And I still think you could have the summer, like I like it being in different seasons.
But I still think you could have done it with seasons without involving the school too. I just think it's because
I do think they had to say it though. I don't think you can have teenage characters without specifying ages. I think then it gets very weird. I think it's always going to come up because they always talk about it. Like you're never going to hear teenagers not say like senior, freshman, junior, middle school.
I'm okay. Maybe it's because I'm not American, but I personally don't think it would have been that weird. I think I could have just, because the thing is, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have known the kids were meant to be like 14 or whatever, but I'm not constantly reminded that they're meant to be, because then also you had the opposite. I say the opposite, similar thing, but just pushing into like Grease casting territory. Oh my God, you had I'm guessing he was a senior, but we had Eddie's character and that group who all looked like middle-aged people. Why were you in school? But do you see my point? Like, if you don't actually put them in a school, I will let you trick me into thinking that they're meant to be younger than what they are.
It's just, I feel like they kind of, they're struggling because they want to cast the people they want to cast, and they're not taking age into consideration enough at all. And I know a lot of people can look past it, but personally, I really struggle with it because it's already so fantastical. I do need some stuff to be a bit more grounded, you know?
I also think, obviously, because with the pandemic and everything as well, there was just like breaks where they didn't know when they were going to come back. So, look, it's not ruined the show completely. If anything, it's causing like a bit of discussion. It's like a little thing that people just like, not in a horrible way, make fun of, but just like, we all know these kids are too old. But then to be fair, throughout history, we've always known that kids were too, well, adults were too old to be playing kids.
This is just so much funnier because you've just watched them go through puberty. Like I've been seeing all these jokes, like, you know, when the trailer for season 4 came out and everyone was joking that Finn Wolfhard looked like he'd just been through his second divorce. I was dying at all those jokes. But like, I don't know. I just think, same in season 3. Yeah. A lot of season 3 was focusing in on how these kids are trying to be older than they are. You know, like teenagers do. And it's like, mate, but they do look that age. Like, oh my God, they're only 13 and they're trying to act so much older. And it's like, they're so obviously older. Like,
I know.
I can't buy into it.
Yeah.
And I, you know, like, oh, it sounds so mean, but you know how Will in season 3 looked like such a wet towel because he kept wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons with everyone. Like, no, we've grown up, and he's like, no, we're still kids. Like,
but
that was his trauma response as well.
I was gonna say that's what I read that as, because I was like,
it's both, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the fact that they did just like, they suddenly were so lanky. You know?
It just can't. The thing is that, like I said, I get it. It can't be helped.
No.
But one thing I will not forgive is CGI de-aged 11.
Oh,
haunting.
Once we get to Uncanny Valley, I'm not into it.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch the first seasons, because was she ever really that small?
She was teeny.
She was teeny tiny. Although I guess maybe she was meant to be even younger than what she was in season 1. But anyway,
she was so young when they filmed that first season. She was 11 years old. Which, looking back on it, is insane. Like, she was younger than the rest as well. Like, the others were like 12, 13, weren't they? Which when you're that age feels like, oh my God, that feels like 10 years of difference, doesn't it? Just very scary.
I can imagine these kids' lives. Like, obviously I've seen a lot, and it is like obviously upsetting to see the stuff, like, because obviously, you know, with stuff like this, you get like the memes and the poking fun and like, but like from the fans, but then you do have like the really horrible stuff of like people actually commenting on these kids. And like, I didn't even realize this was a thing until recently, but like people saying, for example, like Millie Bobby Brown's like really annoying.
That's been
and
a joke
I'm just
for
like,
about 6 years. Have you seen she's actually like spoken out about it?
I have now. I didn't realize before, and I was just like, my heart really broke for her, because I was just like, obviously I know she's growing up now, but she was literally a child.
Great Finn Wolfhard being gobby and sassy in interviews, but then when she would do the same,
I'm not saying sexism, but I'm not saying sexism.
I mean, it's just so funny, isn't it? Because it's like, it's so fun having Stranger Things back for a summer. There's something about Stranger Things in the summer which is great, you know. And like, I mean, this episode is literally like the summer of Aliens, so it fits perfectly. But it is interesting, like seeing all this like discourse in the middle of the summer. Does that make sense? Like, I guess it's just very interesting to me. Like, it's the summer, enjoy a show, you know.
I'm starting to realize that I think this is also like the beginning of things coming back, if that makes sense, because obviously, you know, we've had like recaps at the end of years and stuff, and we've spoken about how like these past 2 years specifically have been really drastically different from any other years, but also from each other. And like, we seem to now be coming back a bit to, like you said, there's going to be points this year where you can like say, oh, this was this part of the year and this was this part. I said, this was the summer of Stranger Things. Everybody was talking about it. I was going to definitely watch it when it came out, but I was like trying to find the time. And then I saw so much about it on Twitter. I was like, I'm just going to watch it now, because I don't like, it's not even like I was cared about seeing spoilers. I just wanted to be a part of it all going on right now. Like, I enjoyed going into work and talking about it with people.
So I am back to like Game of Thrones and all, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I am very excited. I know it's only gonna be like 2 episodes, but I'm very excited for it to come back. Also because, and I know it's probably intentional, but the last episode left me wanting a lot. Not as in just like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens. I just think it left on kind of like a bit of a, not as big of a hype as it could have done, but I get that it's a break. It's not a final episode. So I am excited for it to come back.
I'm a bit nervous about the length. Not that like I can't sit through it. I'm just like, why so long? You know what I mean? It's got me curious.
It is weird, considering that like a lot of people have obviously spoken about how like give me like 20-minute episodes and I'll sit there all day. Give me like hour and a half long, and I need to split it over. I don't know why they've decided to do that. It's a bit strange.
Who knows? But I'm just like, I don't know, I'm enjoying it. Season 4's been good. The references in this season have been less like obvious, but they're more like tone based.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of discussion of like Nightmare on Elm Street, and Robert Englund was in this.
Was literally in it, yeah.
I'm fuming. No one told me. No one messaged me and said, Leanna, did you know that Robert Englund is in season 4 of Stranger Things?
Well, I didn't message you because I didn't know if you got into that episode, and I didn't want to like ruin it for you, because like when it
was really cool.
Because obviously, because of like who he is iconically, it wasn't like seeing him. It was like, and they knew what they were doing because you heard him before you saw him, and you heard, like, I was watching it.
That's for the fans,
I was like, and I heard his voice, and I was like,
I don't know, we were talking before we started recording about, so like references and how they can add to something, and we even mentioned like just, you know, a few minutes ago about how they're not essential, but you can gain something if you know them. And like, I kind of want to chuck some out there while we're on the topic of Stranger Things. So one of my favorites that I was literally recounting to Sky is that, where is it, Sean Astin in season 2. That's kind of iconic casting. I think like we all fell to our knees when we saw that. I think one of the best things they ever did in Stranger Things was have him in that map scene, drawing the maps, finding X. What an icon. Also, the kids being into Lord of the Rings. Come on. Like, I think what I love about Stranger Things is that they managed to meld their homages and their references so well. So they'll literally involve people like Sean Astin, Robert Englund, and then they'll reference the properties that they starred in and be like, the kids enjoy these. And I just think that's so ballsy.
It creates so much excitement though, and I think this is why the show is doing so well, because, you know, we said, I don't know if we've said it whilst we were recording, but we definitely said it before we started, that this show really does have something for everyone, in the sense that you can watch it and just enjoy it because it is a really good show. Yes, it has its moments that, you know, could be built upon better, but so does everything. Or you can like really pay attention, deep dive, and there's so much to explore. And again, that's what makes it exciting, because you're excited by the story anyway, and then like shit like like fucking Robert Englund turns up and you're like, the fuck,
you lose your mind. Or even little things like they use music from John Carpenter films, and we've just been talking about The Thing. The kids have The Thing poster in their basement, you know, like it's just the fact that you get to experience the excitement the kids do over things, you know. And I'd say especially for people like the Duffer Brothers age, you know, like people that grew up with that stuff, like I cannot even begin to imagine how rewarding watching Stranger Things must be. Like it must just be an absolutely like next level experience. But what is so interesting on the flip side of that, while they seem to enjoy it, they don't seem to enjoy it as much as younger audiences. And I don't know, do they seem to see it as ripping off? We've briefly talked about this.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think sometimes people don't let themselves enjoy stuff enough because they feel like it's like portraying the original. Which I will admit, I imagine you might have felt the same. Not just for Stranger Things, I have done in the past in general. Like I've gone to watch something that was like either a remake, but then I feel like if you're a remake, you are asking for it, or just stuff that was inspired by something that was similar to a sequel, anything that's kind of tied to something else that, even if the original media wasn't successful, I just loved it. It is hard to then go and not nitpick and criticize, and sometimes generally even invent criticism, because you don't, like I said, you don't want to portray your original source, you know, you don't want to admit that it's actually doing a pretty good job, you know, but it's like, unless anybody doesn't know that, you can love more than one thing quite equally as well.
And that's something I'll definitely leave as like an end note as we're wrapping up this episode, is that like you can enjoy Stranger Things and not, you know, nitpick it to death. Like you can enjoy the references, you don't have to analyze it like crazy. I'm seeing these TikToks, oh my god, they're doing too much. They are doing too much. I'm not sure if you're seeing them, Sky. It's too much.
I usually skip over them, I can't lie.
It's okay to just sit back and enjoy a show, man. Like, especially like we've been talking about this whole episode, something fun, some sci-fi for the summer. You know, enjoy it, you know, sit back, soak it in. But I do have other stuff to add at the end of this episode. I feel like we're wrapping things up pretty good here.
I think I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. I will actually say keep an eye on our socials for the next like couple of days or whatever, because just you saying sci-fi for the summer, I think we'll make some recommendations. Like I'm sure loads of people know stuff, but it's like when you think like, oh, actually that would be like so fucking good as a double feature, and like my first one is just please watch The Thing and then watch E.T. Just they're so different from each other, but like the experience of watching them back to back, I don't know. Just do it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You can have that real 1982 experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Sky said, keep your eye out on our socials. We've been putting out a lot of content recently. We plan to put out a lot more exciting stuff. And we just really appreciate the support. So give us a follow on Twitter and subscribe here, like the video if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed. And I think that's everything from us today.
I think so. Oh, if you see us like just popping around anywhere, we're like really not scary. Just say hi, tell us what you'd like, or even actually no, don't tell us what you don't like about us. I don't want to hear that. Yeah, just have a conversation. We're always happy to talk to people. We're always also looking for like recommendations ourselves, because we love talking about stuff that we love, but there have been times where like we've just had so much fun with something completely new. So yeah, I'd encourage that a bit more.
Definitely. Let us know new stuff. It's always fun for us to discover new things as well. So yeah, I think that's everything from us today.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
So
right.
bye.
Bye.